Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Nickel's live event. I'm pleased to introduce their speakers for today, Terry Lynch, CEO, and Ken Williamson, VP of Exploration. They'll provide a quick update on the company's recent press release, including the discovery of their new high-grade copper, palladium, platinum, gold, silver zone. And afterwards, we'll be answering questions. You can submit the questions in the chat at any point during the conversation, and we'll address them at the end. As always, the summit is being recorded and will be available on six.com to watch afterwards. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Terry to kick things off.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day. A bit of a cold, chipper morning here in Toronto. So I'm over at the Red Cloud conference and just finished a presentation there and had to race back to get here to talk to you guys. So it's good timing. I'm going to just remind you on a few key points about our company, and then we'll get into the exploration stuff in more detail with Ken. You know, it's interesting. You know, obviously our claim, best nickel investment on the planet, is a pretty bold claim. How do we make such a bold claim? So, the major thing that we do, if we could leap ahead a couple of slides here, Ken, to the comparables page. One more. Yeah, I look at investment from the perspective of asymmetric risk. I think everyone should. It's like, what am I risking versus what potentially is my return? So I don't want to risk a lot, but I want to potentially make a lot. So, so our whole assertion, for Power Nickel is that, when we look at high-grade nickel sulfide, and that's what we're comparing ourselves to, we're not looking at Canada Nickel or Giga Metals or FPX. Those are different animals. I don't really have the skill set to talk about them. I think there'll be one or maybe two of them built. These are very big projects, big capex. Moderate returns. Will take a lot of government and industry money to get them going, but I think some of them do, and when they get done, then I think they make a lot of money, and they're good investments too. Generally speaking, historically in mining, higher IRRs are what really drives the mine development. And I would say that we're going to have a exceptionally good high IRR project, and that will mean it will become a mine. And when things become mines, you make money. So relatively speaking, when we compare ourselves to our peers, I look at market cap per unit of nickel in the ground, and in that case, we're the cheapest, or lowest price, best value, if you would, relative to our peers. And I think it's going to grow because of our exploration program, which we're going to get into. So next slide, Ken. The other thing that I think that's very different about Power Nickel relative to our peers is our peers are generally miners. They're finding a project and they're hoping to have somebody effectively buy it, and to the most part, that's the process. We're actually probably going to go the other way. We've actually gone out and found an industry partner that would look to actually collectively put up the capital stack and build the thing and then operate it. So why is that sort of an edge for us? Well, it really is an edge because the money in nickel is in the refining, not in the mining. As an example, there's nothing but dark news these days about nickel. But as an investor, I would say one key thing to keep in mind. Generally, the most money you make as an investor is when you go from bad to less bad. So in nickel, I'm saying it's about as bad as it can be out there, and we're moving to less bad because actually the underlying fundamentals of nickel are still robust. You would think from the news headlines that nickel demand was going down. It's actually rising at double-digit rates. Okay, and there's a lot of fundamental growth underneath nickel, especially Class 1 nickel in North America. And what you're going to understand is there's a lot of different nickel markets. So there's Indonesian nickel in the Far East and what happens with them in China. And that really doesn't impact a North American Class 1 nickel project like Power Nickel as much as the market would have you think. So, what you see from having, Samsung make that, investment commitment, for Canada Nickel is that despite, they could tap into Indonesian nickel, they're making a serious, like a $20 million equity investment, $110 million joint venture investment, like $1 billion sales contract for Canada Nickel and that's still not fully funded yet. But I mean, that was a big, vote of confidence, I think, for that project, but also a vote of confidence for Class 1 nickel in North America. So I think if you're a Class 1 nickel project in North America, you're going to, and if you've got especially high IRRs, we will have, then that's going to be make an exceptional investment opportunity. Now, CVMR, who's our investor, and they're funding effectively a $7.5 million feasibility program. They're about 2/3 of the way funded in that. We'll have our first benchmark results out from CVMR in just a short while, and basically, what they do is they're a nickel refiner, right? So they want to take our ore body and they want to make nickel products. They're amongst the world leaders in nickel powders. Nickel powder, as an example, is getting $80,000 a ton. LME nickel is around, I don't know, it's probably around 15,000 now. I didn't look at it this morning. I can't remember exactly, but it's a big difference, and it doesn't cost you anywhere. It's like $5,000 to go from one to the other. So it's huge to be in the refining side of the business. Now, if you're not a refiner, there is no hope for miners to get there unless you partner, because it's a very complicated business, has a very specific skill set, and generally speaking, Glencore and Vale and Rio Tinto, BHP, Wyloo, the big boys, they're not sharing. They're buying the nickel miners, and they're making this money themselves, and that's what their business model is, and God bless them. Now, for us, our opportunity was that we became aware of CVMR and their approach. They've got 18 plants around the world. They're joint ventures. So this would be another, approach, to doing a joint venture to build a mine and a refinery to go to finished products. The interesting thing about doing that is there's several ways to win in that circumstance. First way to win is better recoveries. So when we make a condensate, we're making a condensate, which we'll see in the 43-101 in a second. You make a condensate to fit right now the current smelters that are proximus to us in North America that we could ship to. So we're sort of living by how they need to get a nickel concentrate. It's best for them, it's not best for us. So we recover 70%, which is okay, but obviously you're leaving 30% of the nickel on the ground. That hurts. With CVMR, we'd expect to get upwards of 90% recoveries. So that's a significant, like 30% increase across the board on your revenue side of things. So that's a big plus. The other thing with the condensate process is iron, which is in our ore body, iron is about 12% of the ore body. The nickel is associated with iron. Quite often, that's quite common in massive sulfides. So that's a waste product, the iron, in the condensate process. But with the CVMR process, they would make iron powders. So it's a paying process. So all of a sudden, we're looking at this and saying, conservatively, we're going to get 2.5 to 3 times LME pricing for our project if we partner with these guys, if the feasibility study works out. So that's the big win there. And we're, obviously CVMR is confident enough that it is working out, that they've moved beyond the benchmark studies, which will come out shortly, and they're now into the next stage, which is the prototype, which will come out in sort of mid-May. So we're feeling very bullish that this is all going to work out, and the feasibility studies will show a very high economic rate of return. Next slide, please. Of course, in the mining sector, nothing starts unless you have a deposit. Okay, you got to have a grade and tonnage, as they say. So we posted 7.2 million tons. Two things that we just posted this in December. Which is, ideally you'd like to have posted this in January, but you post it when you get it done. And so basically 70% of it's indicated, so that's high confidence factor. 30% of it is inferred. You'll note that the inferred is getting better grade at depth, and that's not uncommon. That's sort of how nickel rolls, just because the nickel associated with iron is quite heavy, so it'll drop down the stack. What's interesting about our project is that, generally speaking, most of the resources around 300 meters deep. That's quite unusual for nickel. Usually nickel's quite a bit deeper, and we think that while we have a series of shallow deposits we think we can take advantage of, we think there's probably going to be something even greater at depth, and that's one of the sort of the asymmetric upsides you've got with power nickel. Next slide, please. When we we're exploring this last winter. One of our last holes we did at the end of the year was our geological team, Ken and his team. They basically identified this ultramafic target to the northeast, almost towards the end of our land claim. We call it Wildcat. And we saw a visible expression of the ultramafic rock at surface. And we thought, okay, there's an EM anomaly here. Let's take a shot. And we took a small, 100-meter hole and took a plunge. And, at 60 meters, we hit this tremendous intersection of about 8 meters of 1 ounce PGMs. So that was exciting for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, obviously that's a bonanza grade hole. That's just tremendous rock for that size. Two, it means that this area potentially still charged 5.5 kilometers away. That's very exciting news. And when we've talked to industry partners about this, I mean, the head of exploration at Rio Tinto said, well, that's a phenomenal result for you because that's what happens with the big nickel PGMs like Norilsk, etc. You'll get something cooking at depth, and these fireballs of high-grade PGMs get fired up top, and then they land and they're quite close to the surface. So that's really good sign. So that was super exciting for us explorationally to see that. And as a result, we thought, well, we're onto something big here at Power Nickel, and this is a big land package, potentially a big resource. So next slide, Ken. So we basically thought, what's the best way scientifically to de-risk this and attack this? So we had become aware of this new technology called ambient noise tomography, and it's basically a super sensitive seismic. And these things to the right are called geodes. They basically get put on the ground, and they send a sound pulse down about 2,000 meters into the earth, comes back as a sound map, and then they correlate these sound maps, and they have algorithms that basically compare that with the other scientific data you've got. So obviously your drilling data, your downhole EM, your airborne EM, your gravity, your IP, your magnetics. You can pull all this data together and start to make better intelligence of it. Okay, so what we get is more sort of almost like a 3D visualization at depth, and you get great lithographic control. So this is basically going to help us, we believe, optimize our drilling program going forward. Like everything in mining, nothing is perfect. We're not going to hit 100% because we've got this. What we're going to do is basically drill, we think, more efficiently. We're going to get to our discoveries quicker, and we're super stoked about what this has taught us. So I'm gonna shortly pass this over to Ken. One more slide. So this approach, when we were analyzing it, we found that the ultramafic rock, which the ambient noise measures velocity of the rock. So it turns out everything on Earth has a velocity. I didn't know this, but now I do, and now you do. So the ultramafic has a 4,300 meters a second. And what we noticed, or what Fleet noticed in their survey and analysis of the survey, was that when it dropped off to 3,600 to 3,750, this is where the massive and semi-massive sulfides were deposited almost on a one-for-one basis at our deposit. So that became a bit of a signature for Ken and the team to sort of say, okay, where is this ant signature located in our survey radius? Okay, and then let's start to hunt in those areas. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our chief hunter, our main man in the sky. Ken, why don't you talk us through the exploration program we're currently working on using this tech?
Absolutely. Oh, well, I'm going to use a little bit the PowerPoint presentation, or the slideshow here. And then, if you allow me, I will jump live into our leapfrog model and be able to show exactly where we're at as of this morning. So, as Terry was mentioning, the ant survey that was conducted on the property did help us out quite a bit, visualizing what's happening at depth. And as Terry was explaining, the velocity map or velocity model that we're obtaining, in my own words, is related to the rock densities. And we know that density contrast can be observed and measured, I guess, from that technology. So what we ended up doing is running that survey and then identifying very good targets that would share the same ANT signature as what was observed at Nisk Main. So in a nutshell, we came up with 4 targets that we've labeled ANT 1 through 4. Just labeling clockwise, I guess, around the clock here. But all of those targets would share one way or the other similarities to the signature we did observe at ANT. So other things that we see on that particular image is not only the targets, but we kind of see some different planes and lines that were designed here. That's the lithostructural component also of the study. The ANT survey, not only it allows us to visualize in 3D what's going on in terms of potential targets and things, but overall it gives us a really good view of the entirety of the deposit in terms of structural blocks being there and displacement and calculations we can make like this. So it's really, really good science. And at the end of the day, if we look at that a little closer, what we had defined were those 4 targets. And if we look at that in a long view, looking north, almost north-northwest, in a sideway, that's the top portion here that's called the long view. So we'd see where Nisk Main is related to surface and how deep it goes. That's about 500 meters down. And then the location of those ANT targets relative to the Nisk Main target. So the one thing we'll see, combining the 2 images, the plan view at the bottom and that long view up top, is we'll recognize here major faults that were interpreted from the ANT survey itself, defining thus structural domains. And what we believe is from the offset we interpret on along those faults, we've moved the entire domain, say in this case, down and west and down and east, for instance, to predict where the targets or the Nisk Main lens offset could be. Now we're testing this. So far we've drilled 1 hole in ANT3, about there where the cursor is. We're currently testing ANT4, and the idea here is very high-level exploration. We initially will want to punch 1 hole into each of them 2 targets, about to be completed with this one. And the idea is to have a first look, because really there's no data at all in this area here. So the idea is to have a first look at depth. What do we see? What do we get? And if we're lucky, we'll lock on directly to something really good there. That remains to be seen. But whatever is happening, this is going to be very good scientific knowledge acquired, in the sense that the data, the knowledge will be passed on back to the fleet team, who's going to, be in a better position to reanalyze their own survey and constraining it better with geological information that is coming from that drilling. So you can see this as a first pass, like refining the model and the interpretation, and we'll get back to those areas a little later. We currently have 2 drills running. One of them is finishing off. I was mentioning drilling that initial ANT4 target. The other rig is on Wildcat, and we'll get a little bit more detail on that. I'm going to finish with the punchline, I guess. So one rig is on Wildcat. We'll see details of that very shortly. and the one rig that is on Ant 4 right now, the plan in a few days, I would say, will be to move it back in this area here. And we have a drill program set up to be drilling Ant 1 and 2 at the same time with one drill hole. So in plan view, we'll be setting up the drill about where the cursor is, and we'll punch through Ant 1 a little closer to surface, and Ant 2 at a significantly greater depth about where the cursor is the plan here. Ant 2 was my favorite target of all time. The reason is probably because we have a lot more information in this area as compared to information we had on the west side. So speculations and interpretation and predictions, I guess, in this part of the world are slightly more precise or better educated than what it is on the west side. So I'm very, very intrigued by what we will discover here. And as a reminder, the expectation is as simple as finding the offset equivalent of the NISC main lens that we have here, which from the last drill holes we add to the east, continuity seems to be there, but grade is lowering down quite a bit. And we see some sort of a shift in the geology, so it is expected actually that the lens would kind of follow the same offset observed in the lithology model. So on that, what I'm going to do, I'll just turn off all of this here and go back to the real system. So it's a little uglier than the PDF presentation here, but at least what I'm going to show you here, guys, is the complete story. So as I was mentioning, we've drilled a first drill hole in ANT3, which is that yellow panel here, and you can see PN24043 drilled there. Assays are pending on that one. And then that panel here, ANT4, that's the current drill hole that we have. We're not yet through the, let's say, the target area on that one. So now if we were to spin this around a little bit, as you will see, is this particular hole here. Let me just clean up this thing a little bit. No, I'll keep it on. So as you can see in the background here, following my cursor, is that second last hole, I guess, we've done to the west. We did intercept the target, so to speak, in terms of geology. We've confirmed that the right rock types were there, and all of this obviously allows us to update and increase the level of confidence of our model as we go. And this current hole, as you can see, it's just about to hit the target there. We decided to drill this one from south to north to test an EM anomaly that was on top, near surface in this area. So we'll keep you guys posted when we get new news to release about that. So, and as I was mentioning, the next plan will be to drill this hole here, permit number 22, which is that blue line punching through ANT2 target block in yellow here, about at that location. And it's will be following up, I guess, in a down dip way, some mineralization that we had intercepted in hole 20. That would be back in 22. And then, as you can see, it's a fairly huge step out. Each square on screen are 200 meters grid So we'll be drilling like 400 meters below, something like that, that little hit that we had. The expectation here is that the top part was lower grade because the main lens, which sits where all of that cluster of assay points is located, that the main target actually would sink down quite a bit, and that is interpreted basically from the ANT data that we have to play with. And if I display that on screen for you, that is the model that we have to play with. So spinning this slowly, and now we're looking at this to the south, from north to south now. And what we will observe is in this area here, we can see it's slightly orangey color. It means that there's well, we can visualize it as a little hole sinking down there, and that to us is the ant signature like level. So what we're trying to do is to we were drilling up top. As you can see, it's slightly in here shallower in terms of depth. It seems to be sinking down, and that old number 22, which is right there, will be targeting deeper in this area here. And we're very, very hopeful that the theory is correct on that one. So that gives us an overview for the NISC main area, so to speak. Now, if we move 5 kilometers to the northeast, here's the current situation that we have at Wildcat. We've recently published a press release showing really nice pictures coming from hole 44, which is that big long one here. And I'll explain why we decided to push it a lot deeper than this, like this. But you can see that little CP intercept here. That means chalcopyrite, basically. So in the press release we've presented, we can visually calculate that there's about 3 times as much massive sulfides that were observed in hole 44 as compared to the discovery hole, which was 31A, with that 7 meter of plus 1 ounce material thing. So we do anticipate getting really good grade, very interesting intercept on that one. Now the follow-up was to be, why is it not there? The follow-up hole, which I can't see on screen, was drilled in this area here. So we'll just pretend that this, no, it's not even that one. Since somewhere in between in here, half distance, I don't understand why it's not displayed, but believe me, there's a recent hole that we've drilled in this area here. Now, based on this hole, we decided to go back closer to the initial fence where we've discovered those PGMs. Reason being, and I'm not gonna lie here, let's say the results that we've seen in here were less interesting than what we were anticipating. But the reality is, if you look at the scale again, that's a 150 meter grid. So we were being very, very aggressive and ultra optimistic here by drilling like 200 meters away from that spectacular hit. And mind you, the goal here was, if we do lock on to the same kind of stuff, we just define 200 meters, which is, if we, for the old timers like me, it's 600 feet distance. It's a huge distance for an high-grade pod, isn't it? So that was very, very optimistic. It didn't come back as good as what I would like to, but it came back with knowledge that we didn't have. So for instance, we're now in a position where initially the target we were looking for was sitting right along that purple surface, which is the ultramafic contact against the felsic intrusives that are on top in here. So you can see the yellow versus purple. So that surface is right at there, and the massive sulfides in those two holes is located right at the contact. So when we've drilled here was interesting, but not as much. Now looking better at the data with what we've realized at one point in this, there is no real PGMs anywhere else along those holes. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my point set here. There's no real PGMs. I'm just going to put palladium back at the contact for this hole, but there is a sniff of palladium and platinum further down the hole. So now it's very simple 3-point exercise that I've done here by connecting the first discovery hole with the massive sulfide observed in that hole 44, connecting that with that third point and defining a red panel, which I'm thinking could perhaps be a structure. And if we look in a plan view, slightly tilted, so we look down dip, the orientation of such structure is not really far off from interpreted structures that we've interpreted at NISC. So if the geometry is consistent, what we see at Wildcat compared to NISC, well, the possibility of that PGM material being somewhat associated to a structure would make sense. So what we decided to do to test properly the area is to get back to that same collar location. We'll be reusing the same pad, so less trouble for permitting and things like that. And we've designed so far 4 shorter holes, 2 on the east side and 2 others slightly longer on the west side, to actually test a smaller volume but much more constrained around where good sulfides were intercepted so far. So it may seem like very, very closely spaced. Now let's do a little blowout here to make things a little bit more realistic in terms of size. Each square here is 50 meter. So 50 meter, it's 150 feet in my old days, I guess. And if I recall, high-grade zone at Goldcorp, multi-ounces gold veins were maximum being 150 feet literally in terms of size, but those things were shooting down for a kilometer down, like was more rod shapes rather than panel shaped targets. So because it's PGMs, because it's so high grade, perhaps we are facing a situation that is somewhat similar in the sense that the very high grade mineralization could perhaps be related to a structural control against the ultramafic contacts and potential structures, creating probably extension. I have trouble with that word. An extensional environment where those fluids could have been sucked in and creating such an high-grade pod. So to test all possibilities, we'll be drilling those 4 holes. We're currently drilling this first one on the top right. And then following that, we'll be probably drilling the shallow one to the west. And then we'll take a little step back for about half hour, analyze the data, redo a 3-point exercise here to define a geometry and then keep going. So I guess the strategy has reverted back to what it should have been, closer to where the intercept is, and will expand as we go, rather than shooting large trying to discover the, you know, the PGE target of the world here, well, we'll be modest a little bit more here and get closer and expand that thing. Now, that being said, that is one target that we've already locked on. In terms of geophysics and other geological information we have around this area, there is an EM anomaly that sits nearby this wonderful hit that we have. And on the same EM mag map, I think I have it here actually, we do have two other EM anomalies that showed up, I guess, in those particular location as well as further down. So it seems that there is some sort of a trend connecting those EM anomalies together, and we're yet to define what is the relationship between EM anomalies like this one and spectacular PGEs like we have in the holes. Is it the same thing happening and repeating itself around those two other EM anomalies? That is also something we will be testing after defining a decent volume in this particular, for this particular target. So I'm expecting when it's time to get off get out of that area, because it's going to be too warm outside at one point. Drills can't be sitting in swamps and lakes. So we'll have to move away potentially in a few weeks from now, and I'll probably will want to at least test one of them or both of them before we move out, so we can get excited for when we come back. At least we would know if that is worth it or not, and then better be planning the upcoming drilling program accordingly. So we won't leave this area without knowing, so to speak.
So Ken, on the, it's very interesting, obviously, the good PGM hits and following that up and putting together a resource there. That'll be interesting. And we also went deeper there, again, sort of like we did with Ant 3 and Ant 4, where we're also looking at, maybe the massive sulfide being deeper in terms of the nickel side of the things. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, that is the ANT survey block for Wildcat, and as you can see, it's not connected as of yet. We need to decide if we will run a bigger survey to encompass the whole thing here. But one of them hole, yeah, absolutely, was pushed further down, and again, that will be a good demonstration of how the ANT survey and technology can be useful for us. So here's the deal. I've just cut a section here through the hole. So along the hole and through the ANT data. So again, what we're looking here is velocities in meters per second. You have the scale here at the right side. And what we're looking for is not necessarily a particular color, like a color that would define a unit or a color that would define a target. What we're looking for is contrast, like sharp breaks from one color to the other. So in here, for instance, we can easily recognize that and actually I'm looking at this, guys, as 3 domains. So I've color coded them in blue and red. That would be the top portion. I'm not too interested about this one. The deeper one, colored more in the shades of pink, that's the uncertainty area. We kind of know stuff is going on, but it's getting towards the bottom of the model, such that the level of confidence kind of decreases as we get deeper and deeper, which is totally normal. And that middle block here is, I believe, where we see the most things happening. So we were to actually drill this particular hole and stop it, you know, shortly after hitting the massive sulfides that we've seen. And I'll show you guys a few pictures in just a few minutes here. Totally forgot about that. But then decided to push that hole a lot further. Well, almost 3 times the proposed length. Why? Well, we wanted to test a couple more things. So while being there, why not, you know, doing a better job? So the one thing that was happening here, I'm just going to put back again the that particular EM anomaly target here. There is those EM anomalies, and if I go back to the full tilt image, we'll also see a small anomaly here, like a bullseye thing to the south. So there was a hole, and there's still a hole planned to be testing that mag anomaly there. But if I go back to the section view here that we have, what we wanted to do was to actually test perhaps that anomaly deeper down and see to what it could be related to. Now, combined with that, we also had some mapping that was done and realized by the team we have upside, the GeoVector management team that does a fantastic work for us up there. Had mapped several outcrops that were available during summertime, obviously, and of those outcrops, one of them here on surface was showing some ultramafics, mafic intrusions, etc., etc. So the prediction that is from the ANT survey was clearly showing that from this outcrop here, the anticipated dip on their surface would be like following the cursor somehow. So please, in your head, hide this hole. The only thing we had to play with was those outcrop on surface and the ant survey. So we decided to punch that hole or push it a little further to actually test the idea, and confirming actually that the ant survey in this particular case matches almost perfectly with the geology that we're observing in here. And what do we see actually in more detail is that green domain that seems to be related, or appears to be directly related, to the ultramafic domain. And then when we hit that break, that velocity contrast from green to yellow, that's where we're entering the tunnelite or the felsic intrusion sequence. And once we hit that sharp contrast again from yellow to orange, that's where we actually enter that southern domain, where we start seeing again ultramafic rocks and mafic intrusions and other types of volcanics to the south. So it is, I believe, a good example of two things. One, a good example that I believe we're trying to do the best job as we can here at spending the money in the ground. Every opportunity we have to kill 2 birds with 1 stone will do. And secondly, it demonstrates very well, I think, how the ANT survey can be useful for us in areas where we have absolutely no data. At least we can do educated guess and predict, you know, the dip of them structures and et cetera, et cetera.
And I think, you know, as I sit back here as an investor watching it, I'm thinking, you know, what's the intelligence? What have we done here? You know, we identified through the ANT survey these 4 targets. And then our approach on all of them is basically to, you know, we're taking, you know, a target to pierce each one of these things. We're trying to get as much geological information we can from that initial drill hole. Obviously, we hope to strike it in the first hole, but it is obviously exploration. So that's one of your hopes. But the plan is basically pretty simple. You drill the hole. Hopefully you hit it. If you don't hit it, then you put the downhole EM in there, and then you basically, the downhole EM will basically track down, hopefully, the magnetics, which is where the the iron and probably the nickel is. So each of these things has basically got an approach to sort of do one hole in each of the 4 target areas, and then follow that up with the downhole EM, and then based on that, then would have a more refined drilling program for each of these sectors to pursue the the exploitation of hopefully the massive sulfides, and that's sort of the primary thing is we are a nickel company. There's a nickel thing we're looking after, and of course the PGM hits. Those are the bonuses, and those things happen on the the super large nickel PGM deposits like Norilsk, where you have big massive sulfides development, often quite deep, often 500 meters to 2 kilometers deep, and then the PGM pockets like the one we hit in Wildcat and hit again are these little fireballs that are tossed up from the cooking at depth up top, where we're picking up at, in this case, 60 meters, and then obviously that enhances your value proposition by hopefully locking in a 1 million ounces of PGMs. That just helps the overall economic perspective. But that's sort of the drilling philosophy we've got in terms of advancing the science, confirming the science, and then iterating with the science. So all this data that we get, it's all good data because it helps to refine the model so that we ultimately can get to more massive sulfide nickel deposits quicker and get them on the books. So that's really what we're trying to do, and we're probably about 15 minutes left in the thing. Maybe we should at this juncture of the exploration story take some questions, and I think Ken, you've done a great job of sort of explaining what the outlook is and how we're approaching things. And maybe I see there's some questions on the just why don't you go through what the pretty pictures look like, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. It's a good idea answering questions and stuff. My conclusion was to be that image. Actually, we have side by side here. Sorry for the bad montage, but side by side the leapfrog model with those assays, that those balls would correspond to the numbers we have on that upper slide. Massive sulfide, massive chalcopyrite actually was seen in that small interval. And what grades actually is the entire thing, with disseminated chalcopyrite and stringers outside of the massive chalcopyrite interval. Now the bottom picture is that new hole that assays are pending. We have no values, but it's approximately 8 meters long interval, equivalent to the one up top. But in this case, look at the amount of massive chalcopyrite that was observed. So visually, it's 3 times the length. So if we got those numbers up top with, that kind of a length, you could speculate, I guess, for what the results will be for 044. So we'll keep you guys posted. Thank you, Terry, for that. I'm done, I think.
Okay, cool. So just looking at some of the questions, Rock, he's asking, Wildcat is near the end of your claim. Are you looking at trying to extend the claims further? Yeah, you know what? There's no open claim ground around us. I mean, the good news is that as we go further north, it's owned by Critical Elements, which is a significant shareholder in the company, and they're a partner in this project as well. They have 20% interest. So to the extent we think it goes out there, I think we could obviously work something out with Critical, as it makes sense. So there's that. D. Chippen is asking, Was the plan to comprehensively look at Ant 3 first before moving on? Did you move on the other ants due to the results of the first drill at Ant 3? No, I mean, basically our plan was to drill a hole in each of these. You know, we basically, you know, have a commitment to follow up with Fleet next summer with a broader program to connect the dots, so to speak, and also to look deeper. But obviously, before we did that, we wanted to sort of test, you know, the results really by, you know, getting an understanding of each of these targets first. So that's why we decided to do Ant 1 through 4 sequentially. And as I said, if we hit it, great. You know, obviously we'll be following that up for sure. If we didn't hit it in the first, you know, spot in a new exploration zone, then the plan was to, you know, put downhole EM in place so we can start to vector in from there. Because basically one of the challenges, you know, with downhole EM is that if you have a hit that's got nickel sulfide, you know, your downhole EM is really not going to help you, because you're gonna find your own nickel sulfide that you've already got. So you need, you know, to have, if you have a hole that doesn't have the massive sulfide, then it serves the purpose of being where you can sort of use the downhole EM. So we think by the end of this program, with victories and defeats, we'll have a very comprehensive view of what each of these 4 sectors look like and how to go at the exploration for them for their you know, massive sulfide potential. The one thing we're confident of, this is the best set of exploration holes we've ever done. That, you know, nickel sulfides come in pods. You know, we found the one pod, Nisk Main. It's highly likely we're going to find other pods, and this is the most cost-effective way to go at it. Let's see what else we got here for questions. EB Consultants, great presentation. Are faults brittle or ductile? Ken, I don't know.
It's more ductile, unless there is some veining in there. Then you would expect more semi-brittle, semi-ductile kind of behavior. But the deformation is not a brittle type deformation. It's deep-seated stuff. Like we're in a fairly high metamorphic facies too. So do not expect like brittle stuff too much.
Okay. And he says, what were the exact geological units encountered at depth in hole 44 and evidence of faulting structures?
In hole 44, we're talking of Wildcat up there. So what we did intersect here was, well, the summary log would tell us a tunnelite and then an ultramafic sequence and then more tunnelite and then another sequence thinner this time of the same peridotite and dunite, and then some more dikes and tunnelite further down. So the one intriguing thing is we can see at Wildcat some sort of an alternating peridotite, dunite type thing. On surface, it's been mapped like almost backward to what we have at Nisk Main. And I mean Nisk Main typically with it peridotite and then dunite below. In some case here, we seem to be hitting the ultramafic sequence upside down, like punching through dunite first and then peridotite after. I didn't really want to get to that today, but just a few words on, generally speaking, we're interpreting here locally from the data we have. We're also in parallel working at defining the regional kind of context on that, and is there or not like major or regional scale folding perhaps on the property that has not been integrated yet in our modeling or in our thoughts. I guess, and things like that. So there are a few local things that we are yet to understand. That's normal, I think. But please be reassured that, you know, whatever piece of information we have, we look at it. If it fits the whole thing, good. But if it doesn't, it becomes like a trigger for us to, okay, what's going on? What's the more global interpretation? And that's why, you know, I was referring earlier that the ANT survey, we have one block at Nisk, Maine, a smaller block at Wildcat. We're contemplating, you know, running a much bigger, wider survey to encompass the whole thing, perhaps at one point, and better understand what we see locally.
So another question was asking about, you know, with respect to recent financings, do we have enough money for our 2024 plans? You know what? You never have enough money. You know, just because it's, you know, you as you make discoveries, you want to follow them up and add resources. So it's inevitable that we'll be raising, you know, more money as we go forward this year. When exactly, you know, will be told in the market. But you know, we've got a lot of good news coming, you know, with the CVMR, you know, benchmark stuff that's coming out. There's a spin out that's happening. There's a lot of good news coming. So we just had a major research announcement this week where Henan Partners, you know, probably the, you know, arguably the best investment bank for junior nickels, you know, based in London. They just launched a coverage this Monday. I was over in London doing some meetings with them and had some great response. And I think, you know, that'll be all very supportive to us as we go forward. Al Folk asks, can you give us an idea future timing of the next assay releases and stuff like that? So I'm guessing, you know, with when we came back in mid-January, so typically I've found the assays take between 8 to 12 weeks. Some take 8, some take 12. There's no seems to be no rhyme or reason to timing on it. So I would say basically from this round of drilling, let's say I would expect to start to get results back February, March, sort of in April, sort of starting in April going forward. And then I would think every couple of weeks, you know, 2 or 3 weeks in April, we'll start to get results from the current drilling program that's going on. So let's just see if there's any other questions. Are there mesoscopic evidence of folding structures in drill cores?
I'd say yes. Some small scale folds are observed in the core, but you know, I haven't honestly logged the core myself, so looked at picture and stuff, which is not the same at all. But we have one. Well, all the geos at GeoVector are really good. One of them, Eric, as mentioned many times, you know, folding, stratigraphic top, trying to determine that, blah 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 blah. So we're kind of investigating really hard on that one. I'm really well aware that this could have, you know, not bad, but major consequences on the interpretation we have. Should we define that it's folded and stratigraphy is, you know, reversed in places and stuff, it may have impact to our on our exploration strategy for sure.
So a couple last questions, and then we'll have to go. The question about the 43101, when we look to update that. So we'd look to update the 43101 probably in Q4, so we can get the fall drilling in, the winter drilling in, you know, and, possibly some summer drilling in, so that we would probably in Q4 look for an update. We had 200% improvement last year, and would be, that's our objective to at least do something similar this year. So we think, right now we're, 7.2 million tons. I think we think that this thing, historically, Ultramafics in Canada, Lynn Lake, 22 million tons, Voisey's Bay, 140 million tons. We think we could certainly be in that range. And, and then if there's something deeper, who knows? That's, like when I talked at the outset about us being the best nickel investment on the planet, I'm talking about the asymmetric nature of the risk here. We're trading at a fraction of what we currently have already discovered and posted relative to our peers, and the whole sector is down. Like, you can buy the whole nickel sector now, and people forget the best money you make in mining is when you buy at the maximum peak of depression. Like, the negativity in nickel is probably as bad as it's ever going to be, and you go from bad, really bad, to less bad. That's when you make really good money in investing. I think we're about to go from bad to less bad, and then eventually we'll get to good. But I think that's an important point to keep in mind. And then last comment was on the what progress are we making on the naked short selling. So we'll see. We're about to roll out our offering circular on our spin out of our copper gold assets. That'll be in a private company that will you'll only get those really nice exciting sort of company that used to be trading almost at the same value as we are today. You'll only get that if you have evidence, i.e. you have a DRS proving you own Power Nickel stock. If you're, and we'll be providing this information to our investors so that they have plenty of time to make sure that their brokers do in fact have the stock in the system, because that's what happens in naked short selling. Is you'll have stock on your brokerage statement, but they won't have it in the house. They will not have collected it, or they will have loaned it out. So what we're going to do is, with this spin out, that will force them, we believe, because there's no way they can paper this over. The only group that can give you this, private share in our Pan American Gold Equities, which has got the great, Chile and BC projects that we've got that are pretty exciting. We'll, probably should have a separate talk about that at some point. You'll have to have the proof of ownership, that you'll prove to our transfer agent that in fact you do have the DRS, you do have the certificate, and then you get the dividend. So that will be a real litmus test on the short selling from a micro perspective for Power Nickel. From a macro perspective, we're turning up the heat on the Save Canadian Mining stuff. I'm just going to be sending today a letter to the Deputy Prime Minister on this whole problem. A number of other people are doing the same. So there's globally, the South Koreans are probably the world leader in it. And they've banned short selling, and they're talking about putting bankers in jail, and that's what should happen here too. So I think the heat is on these naked shorters, and they're undoubtedly have caused most of the casualty in our market is in no small part in respect to their malfeasance. So I think that's Kyle. I think we're probably coming to the end. Is that the any further questions? I think we pretty much wrapped it up, and I think
we can end it there. Terry, great presentation. Ken and Terry, excellent job, and thank you all for attending and asking the questions. It was great conversations as usual with the Power Nickel team here. I guess the only thing I would add is that this is being recorded, so if you did come in a little late, it will be available on YouTube either today or tomorrow. So just keep an eye out if you did come in a little late. Stop on and try and reach out to the team. They're obviously at PDAC if you're attending. But thanks, guys, for the great presentation. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
There was one last question in there, and I just saw it now. Do want to address it. The question was, do you maintain a good relationship with the Cree of Nemaska? And the answer is yes. We're basically all of our drillers stay at the Cree-owned lodge in Nemaska. Our drilling company is in part owned by the Cree. We're trying to do everything we can to partner with them. We fully respect what they're doing, and they're certainly the most progressive First Nations group in the country, really, in respect to mining and their outlook on mining. So we're blessed to be able to be working with the James Bay Cree and looking forward to a long and fulfilling relationship with them. So Kyle, without any further ado, thank you all for listening, and look forward to talking to you in the future. Cheers for now.